Hello and welcome to another episode of Plymouth Culture's new and alternative business models. And today I'm talking to Ruth Catlow, who's co-founder of Furtherfield Art Gallery, which describes its mission, amongst other things, as using art and technology for eco-social change. So, Ruth, why don't you start by telling us how it got going and what it does?
96 was my first real encounter with the internet or the web as a space that anyone could publish to and a space that people could shape. And I met Mark Garrett, and we kind of started out on an adventure, starting at Backspace. So this was London's first fairly anarchistic, creative cyber cafe on Clink Street, opposite. And really the invitation was for anyone to come in and see what the web was good for creatives. And in there were musicians, artists of all stripes, business people, and later I realized just kind of itinerant philosophers, artists and activists from around the world, like really looking at what this space could do. And so this was the start of Furtherfield, and basically we joined forces or became part of a community of artists, techies and activists who were interested in peer production, free and open source software, basically creating the cultural and social infrastructure that we wanted and needed in order to work in a very collaborative way. We created online platforms that allowed people, anyone with a computer and a very slow internet connection, to join and collaborate online in creating. And because this was really early days, and because of a kind of flattening effect in the early days of the web, we were able to invite curators from the Whitney to come and pay studio visits to artists online. Basically allowed artists to create their own spaces, but also to reach across different institutional levels and into different kind of spaces in the established art world to kind of establish connections and to start to kind of intervene in art history and art history canons. I now describe myself as a recovering web utopian because those early days were so heady and exciting, and we really believed that this was a kind of chance to, like, really for people, for grassroots organization to build the kinds of infrastructures that would be more fair, more accessible, more open, knowledge exchange, all of this kind of stuff. But of course, by the mid-noughties, what we got was a centralization of the web, and with the social web like Google, Facebook, Amazon, many others, the creation of what feels like public space, which is actually private space. We opened a gallery in a warehouse space in 2004. And really by then we knew that our focus was on artists who were interested in the social and political effects of life after the web, basically, and starting to look more critically at the social impacts of what the web might be doing. And we wanted to open a physical space, although lots of people said, this is ridiculous, you're interested in net art, work that lives online, like why do you need a physical space to put digital work on? But we understood really early that social spaces are greatly improved by physical gatherings, a space where people can come together and actually have conversations about what they're looking at while eating snacks and drinking. So that's why we opened the gallery. And it really helped us to kind of solidify a community of practice and a kind of critical debate around everything that there was to think about.
So listen, I don't want to focus on the toilet, which I said at the beginning, but how did you wind up in a toilet? One of the things that interests people in Plymouth is how to reuse public space that's not being used, or how to create public space in what is not public space, and enhance the quality of the public realm.
So around 2010, the warehouse where we were was going through the classic kind of gentrification flow, and the what had been the toilet was a classic Victorian toilet, very generous and spacious facilities, had already, as part of Millennium Heritage funding, been converted into a pavilion with the idea that it would be an art gallery. So we went in with the agreement that it would be, it's an informal arrangement and to do an exhibition, and then we'll see where we go. And we are now 12 years on. We still have an informal agreement with the council. And the agreement is that we animate the space with a cultural offer that is accessible to all park users. And that has been our relationship. So obviously, rent-free public cultural space is a massive asset to a small arts organisation. It also comes with huge pressures and responsibilities. Like maintaining a public space in a public park is not a straightforward thing to do. We attend park stakeholder meetings, so we make sure that we're aware of what the other community groups need, and we try to connect with them wherever we can. So basically, we're essentially making it our business wherever possible to be good neighbours, a good part of the community.
Tell us a little bit more about how you manage that process of being both a leading pioneering gallery and also engaging with the local community.
The interests of the people that we're relating to means that partnership becomes a really important resource in the work that we do. About 5 years ago, we started to, maybe longer, we started work on a programme that, instead of funneling like what we regarded as the best of international media art into this space and making it available to the people of the park, we started to flip the model, because we understood that there was a lot that the world could learn from about the communities that already animate this park. And about 3 years ago, we started work on a blockchain-based app called Culture Stake, which uses a new form of voting. And so this kind of flip has really provided the seed, the information, and the kind of community networks to start looking at experiments in deepening cultural democracy, place-based community democracy, or cultural democracy. So we're now using our location in Finsbury Park to test like co-curation projects with the local people in the park, and this is going to be informing our work to take to different places around the country, and this is part of our strategy moving forward.
You've got NPO status, which, for those who don't know, means you get 3 years guaranteed funding at a time from the Arts Council, which obviously is important. But what happened before you had NPO status? How did you fund things?
So until we received regular funding from the Arts Council, which I think first started happening in 2004, I think, we were entirely self-funded. People bought whatever talent, skills, resources they had to make something that was kind of collectively understood as collectively owned, which is why the free and open source culture was so important in the early days of Furtherfield. But it also relies on a certain youthful energy and people having a level of surplus that I think probably just isn't there anymore. I think since austerity, I think that we've really noticed like it's not been possible to sustain Furtherfield on that same model, because they're just like, when we first started, there was housing benefit.
Do you generate any income of your own?
So our major income stream over the last few years has been through partnerships, mainly with higher education. So we've worked with 5 or 6 academic institutions. They have commissioned us to come and work with multiple stakeholders to create engagement events that they can then use as research. Like it creates a fountain of research materials, basically. And that, so we have that plus various other small partnership projects that then help to that bring other funding in.
How do you see what you're doing develop in the future, in the short term?
So all of our work going forward is always looking to build more resilient networks of creative practitioners so that we can support each other in ways that don't require financial economy. And that is super important to us, building what we are calling radical friendship into our collaborations and partnerships is a really crucial part of our future resilience. Going forward, I think we're looking at partnerships with organisations like Serpentine. So I think we now have enough experience and actual expertise, which is pretty unique actually in the decentralised tech space, decentralised tech and art space. So we're using that to partner with organisations like Serpentine to make like really strong international distributed projects where we can continue a kind of experimental work to continue with these cultural democracy experiments that now needs to be supported by bigger institutions, but bigger institutions also need to learn from our process. So it feels like an interesting exchange. I think the economy for artists and cultural workers is so brutal. And so we're trying to make offers that also give us information about what we can do to ameliorate that and to make things more sustainable and less extractive for cultural workers.
Thanks for your time. That's really, really an inspiration.